The Ginetta Junior Championship is about to burst back into action here at Silverstone, a very wet Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, welcoming the drivers for the second of 3 races this weekend, and the 5th round of the 2024 Ginetta Junior Championship. Yesterday's race saw a victory for Henry Josselin, a narrow victory over Charlie Hart, Chase Fernandez, James Shotton, basically everybody in a long line, a drag race to the flag. It was proper Ginetta Junior racing. Today's race, though, could take on a slightly different complexion because it is very wet. It's still raining pretty heavily out around the circuit, and there you can see the problem, really, the standing water. The track conditions are very treacherous. We had this issue here at Silverstone last year, I seem to remember, for a Ginetta Junior race, that we didn't ultimately get a lot of racing in. So I'm hoping that's not going to happen again today, because when they do go racing, wet or dry, you are guaranteed action and excitement as the teenagers take to the track. We're hearing it will be a safety car start. The time, I think, in this 20-minute race is going to start ticking as soon as the safety car leaves the grid, so it'll be a slightly shortened race in some ways, probably a couple of green flag laps as well to allow for the change in conditions from yesterday, but hopefully we'll have time still for a bit of action. And we'll wait and see whether Henry Josselin's going to be able to double up on victories after what was a hard-fought battle yesterday. Really, he, Charlie Hart and Isaac Phelps in the early stages managed to get away at the front of the field, but then as they started to battle, as is often the case in Ginetta Juniors, the rest of the pack were then able to close in pretty significantly, and it all became very, very exciting in the closing few laps. Right at the end, Chase Fernandez sort of injected himself into the middle of that lead battle, and the top 3 managed to pull away with a big fight going on for 4th, but there was really any one of half a dozen or more drivers who realistically could have won that race, and we'll be hoping that they can do so in this one. So the safety car leaves the grid. The time has started ticking down, so the race has technically started, but started behind the safety car, and the field will now make its way, splash its way around Cops Corner and see where the worst of the standing water is. We've just had a GB3 race postponed because of the tricky conditions, but it is rather a different challenge for single-seaters, really, compared to closed-top cars. Visibility is not quite as bad, and obviously they run a little bit further off the ground, so the risk of aquaplaning isn't quite as high, but it is still going to be a challenge for the junior drivers, many of whom will be going into one of their first wet races in their career. Charlie Hart starts from pole position. Charlie has finished 2nd in every race so far this season, but he starts from 1st for this one alongside Isaac Phelps, Marcus Sater and Henry Josselin on row 2 of a grid based upon 2nd fastest lap times from qualifying yesterday. Ethan Jeff Hall and Chase Fernandez are together on row 3 ahead of James Shotton and Archie Clark sharing row 4, whilst the top 10 is completed by Ruben Dan and Alfie Slater. Row 6, Nickolas Ellis and Colin Cronin. Row 7 is where you'll find Alfie Davis and Torrin Byrne. Torrin was very feisty in the early stages of yesterday's race. Jack Robinson and Felix Livesey are together on row 8 of what is a big 26-car grid. Jude Peters and Max Cuthbert on row 9, and the top 20 are completed by Ethan Carney, the American, and Holly Mile. 11 then for Leticio Mabunda with James Ellis alongside. Row number 12 for Mallory Mabunda and Giovanni Cassell-Joseph. And at the back of the grid, we should have Tom Ingram Hill and Harry Moss. 26 cars then hopefully will be taking the start. Will actually have taken the start because, as I said, the time has started to tick down already. And we are hopefully going to have just these 2 laps behind the safety car, and then we'll get going. In the GT Academy race earlier on, we were almost at the point where we were ready to race, and then Luke Shaw unfortunately embedded his Ginetta G56 into a concrete wall, but hopefully the juniors will not have quite the same level of difficulty with the standing water. We should have some good racing on what is a track that always suits these cars. The slipstream effect is still there in the wet. It's perhaps not quite as strong, but really in the wet it's all about finding the grippiest line around the racetrack, and that isn't always where you expect it to be. I said that this might be one of their first wet races. Of course, they did have some wet running at Oulton Park a few weeks ago, but this is a very different kind of racetrack, a very different kind of challenge, and we'll have to wait and see who is going to come out on top. Charlie Hart so desperately close to winning on a few occasions already this season, but has just fallen short every time remarkable run of second places, which is serving him well in the championship because he's scoring very consistently and actually probably leads the points, I would say, after the first handful of races, but would love to have a winner's trophy to take home and put on his mantelpiece at the end of the weekend. Torrin Byrne here, we ride on board with the number 18 car. Like I said, Torrin was in the thick of the action at the start of yesterday's race and was involved in some close quarters stuff on the run down the Hanger Straight, I seem to recall. See what Torrin's got in store for us this time around, starting from the middle of the field, 14th of 26, almost exactly halfway down the grid, which is often where some of the drama can be found, particularly in the wet, because the visibility back there is just so limited. Speaking of the points, I was predicting that Charlie Hart would be the points leader after the first 4 races. That is the case. 4 second-placed finishes means that he's actually 3 points clear of Isaac Phelps, a 2-time race winner. So it does go to show that consistency will take you far in motor racing. You don't have to win the most races to win a championship. There are plenty of races still to go. It's a 25-race season for Ginetta Juniors, but yeah, you don't have to be winning every time in order to be crowned champion come season's end. But Charlie Hart knows that a couple of race wins would not go amiss. Dramas here for Jude Peters, who has stopped at Copse Corner. I don't know whether that's been a spin or if it's a mechanical issue, but either way, the car isn't moving and is parked precariously on the racing line. So Jude Peters is going to need some recovery to get going again, and unfortunately, as we saw in the GT Academy race, that might lead to a slightly delayed sort of real start to the race, which already is actually 5 minutes old. On board with Charlie Hart, who's not quite got a clear view yet. He is following a Ginetta, but it's the G56 safety car. When the race does start, he'll have the big advantage of no spray, clear visibility. He'll be able to spot where the standing water is a little bit better than everybody else. And if we do have a delayed start, might only have to stay in front for 10 minutes or so, which would suit him pretty well. But he's got his Elite Motorsport teammate lining up behind him. There's Jude Peters' car already out of the way. Good work by the Silverstone marshals down at Copse Corner to get that car out of the way. And pushed the wrong way into the pit lane, but that doesn't really matter. There's nothing coming out of the pits. And it means that the track is clear, and we should get a green flag at the end of this lap. So Charlie Hart then, who is son of Chris Hart, who has raced an awful lot of things over the years. He's raced Ginettas before, done a bit of GT racing too. Has had a lot of success in the Fun Cup Endurance Championship as well, has Chris. I'm sure he's here cheering Charlie on this weekend. There's the Fox Motorsport car, number 17, that's James Shotton. James Shotton actually had a really good second half of yesterday's race. He was sort of hanging around towards the back end of the top 10 for most of it, and then suddenly appeared in 4th place with some really brave moves, sort of slicing and dicing his way through some of the battles that were going on ahead of him. And he brought that number 17 machine into 4th place, but now has it all to do again from 7th on the grid. And also keep an eye towards the back of the field for Harry Moss, who is the son of Nick Moss, who's done some GT racing with my esteemed co-commentator Joe Osborne over the years. Joe actually giving Harry some coaching this season, and it seemed to be working earlier on in the weekend when he found a lot of pace in the dry, but then messed up qualifying and had all of his laps deleted for track limits. So Harry has to start from the back of the field, but did charge through from the back row to 11th in the race yesterday. So keep an eye on that grey and orange number 28 car coming from the back of the field. Right, safety car lights are out. It's heading for the pit lane. We're going to have 12 minutes or so left on the clock when the race gets underway proper here at the end of lap number 2. And Charlie Hart and Isaac Phelps will try to bring home an Elite Motorsport 1-2. But the R-Racing pair not far behind, of course, on the grid. 67 Marcus Sater, 25 Ethan Jeff Hall. I'm sure they're going to be a factor in this one as well, as will Henry Jocelyn from 4th for Prep Tech. Who's going to come out on top then in a wet 5th round of the Ginetta Junior Championship? We're about to find out. Round Luffield Corner they go. Charlie Hart still not yet accelerating. Now he goes midway through Luffield. So difficult to get a jump in these cars though, because they don't react instantly really when you hit the throttle, because they are so low on power. And so actually plenty of time for the cars behind to react, which is exactly what they've done. And line astern, they will run through Woodcote across the timing line, and the race proper now gets underway with exactly 12 minutes left on the clock. Down towards Copse Corner, they splash then. Look at the standing water there. Really treacherous conditions for the leaders. but certainly for those further back as they try to just see where they're going. There is Torin Byrne. Shouldn't be surprised really to see Torin already getting stuck in, trying to find a way past the number 74 of Alfie Davis. The leaders though couldn't be much closer together as they head for Maggotts and Beckett's for the first time at speed, and it looks to me as though Isaac Phelps wants to get on with this but goes a bit wide at Beckett's, and so Charlie Hart just pulls an extra length or so as they round the really tricky, winding section of corners that begins this lap around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. A good exit from that sequence is important though, because it gives you the run down the Hanger Straight, and a good exit is what Ethan Jeff Hall has had. He's on the grass though as he tries to get up the inside of Henry Jocelyn. Was only just left enough space but does have the inside line, whilst ahead his R-Racing teammate is trying to go around the outside of Isaac Phelps, and I think might succeed in doing that. Marcus Sater for second place. Chase Fernandez launches up the inside of everybody. 3 wide for fourth, side by side for second. I told you this is a good track for Ginetta Junior Racing. There's contact in the background though, and around has gone Ethan Jeff Hall, spinning down the hill. He's heading back for the track, but thankfully gets the car stopped in time, and that was just a little bit of contact, I think, with Chase Fernandez. There's more touchy-feely stuff going on for second place as Marcus Sater does finally get ahead of Isaac Phelps. And through none of that, really, did Charlie Hart manage to pull away. I'm a bit surprised with all of the side-by-side racing going on behind him that he didn't manage to pull a bit more of a margin. It's still 3 for the lead, and then sideways in the background for Archie Clark, the number 43 machine, who tries to launch himself into the top 5 and actually succeeds only in launching himself into the side of Chase Fernandez's car. Chase, in the meantime, is making a move on Henry Jocelyn, but Jocelyn has the momentum and the grip, more importantly, on the outside line at Abbey Corner, and will hang on to the position. So the leading 3 down towards the braking zone at Village. Phelps back up the inside of Marcus Sater into the right-hander. There goes Clark again, so brave on the inside line, which is not the grippier side of the road. Did that work? We'll find out in a moment. For second place, it's still Sater. Clark did get past Fernandez, and now he's up the inside of Henry Jocelyn, who he sort of elbows out wide over the curb, but Jocelyn keeps his foot in it and stays ahead. I also spotted, whilst that was going on, a bit of a mistake for our race leader, Charlie Hart, but he survived it, held on to the lead down the Wellington Straight, and, well, the Ginetta Junior drivers not being deterred one little bit by the conditions, are they? This is obviously going to be a pretty feisty race, which already is into its second half. Clark back up the inside of Henry Jocelyn now, but it's so difficult to make that move stick. We saw in the dry, actually, yesterday, that going up the inside into places like Brooklands and Luffield, it looks like it's the best way to go, but it just wasn't really working yesterday, and in the wet it certainly won't. Although making a liar out of me is the number 27 car of Alfie Slater, who has just managed to find a gap up the inside of Chase Fernandez, and he's going to move through into 6th position. That was a pretty brave move at Luffield, and then did he ease Fernandez off the road then, I think, going down the pit straight? The spray meant that I couldn't quite see. Where is Fernandez? Still hanging tough around the outside. Chops back across in front of the number 17 car of James Shotton, and tries to get the run on Slater heading towards Maggotts and Beckett's. Did he manage to get back alongside? I think he did, so they're still side by side for 6th position, and Fernandez is going to go back through by the looks of it. Maybe a bit of a touch just as they turn into Beckett's. Out wide goes Slater, and that opens the door now for James Shotton to get alongside. Then you've got Ruben Dan, the number 11 car. I haven't mentioned Ruben really this weekend. He was quick at Oulton Park, the yellow and black Elite Motorsport car, but only now really showing his face inside the top 10. He ended up 12th in yesterday's race, and I think ran about 12th for most of it, so good to see him making a move forward in the wet. Charlie Hart, though, still leads the way as they head down towards Stowe Corner for the 4th time, with Sater and Phelps line astern behind him. All of the action, really, happening behind that leading trio. At the inside goes Shotton, and the outside was Slater, and then you've got Ruben Dan buying into it all as well. So you've got 2 of the R-Racing cars, because that is Ethan Jeff Hall, I think, recovering after his spin at Stowe Corner. That was only a lap ago, wasn't it, that Ethan was pointing backwards. He's already nearly back into the top 10. He's going around the outside of Ruben Dan and has managed to move into, actually, that's 9th place now. So Ethan Jeff Hall has some good speed, doesn't he? He's up the inside of Shotton now as well. This is very impressive stuff. Not letting his confidence be knocked one bit after that spin. And actually could yet make it back into the top 5 before the checkered flag. Big squeeze there, Ruben Dan finding a gap up the inside of James Shotton into Abbey Corner, but James should have the momentum on the outside line. Ruben Dan almost understeers out into him. That was really close to disaster. One of the fastest corners on the track, Abbey Corner. Don't want to be trading paint there. They just avoided contact though. James Shotton stays in front. Back towards the front of the field. Meanwhile, Isaac Phelps trying to outfox Marcus Sater. Not able to do it at the loop. As they do start battling though, Charlie Hart again is given a bit of an opportunity to pull away, but every time he pulls a few lengths, they seem to get them straight back, don't they? So I'm not convinced that Charlie is the quickest of these three, and I'm also not convinced that he had a brilliant run down the Wellington Straight, because actually Marcus Sater is challenging for the lead now, and goes to the inside line into Brooklands corner, sails on into the turn. Can he get the car stopped for the apex? More or less. That will give him the inside line for Luffield, but the grip, as we know, is on the outside. Can Charlie Hart commit to the move? No. Tries the switch back instead. This doesn't often work. Can Charlie make it work? He's got the inside line. He goes through, runs wide on the exit though, and Sater comes straight back at him. So that was what, 3 or 4 changes of lead in 2 corners. Typical Ginetta Junior racing this, and Marcus Sater does get to the head of the field. Marcus, remember, is looking for his first victory in the championship, and actually hasn't had a podium finish yet in 2024, despite having front-running pace so far this season. Charlie Hart is back in second place and thinking, no, surely not again, especially having led so much of this race. Charlie, I think, would be particularly frustrated to have to settle for second place again in this one. 5th consecutive second place finish would be good for the championship, but probably not good for his self-esteem and frustration levels. He wants to try and get on the top step of the podium if he can. Through Maggots and Beckett's they go then. Sater, Hart, Phelps for the lead. Looks a bit gloomier down there now than it was a couple of laps ago, so maybe the rain is starting to intensify a bit more. But the racing has started pretty intense and has not let up one bit since we got this race underway. We've still got 5 minutes and 20 seconds to go, and don't count out Henry Jocelyn in 4th place either, because Henry Jocelyn is catching these 3 as they really start to do battle. Charlie Hart back up the inside of Sater at Stowe corner. Marcus is going to try and hang tough around the outside. Phelps might make it 3 wide on the exit. Can't quite get up alongside his Elite Motorsport teammate, who similarly couldn't quite get past Sater. So Sater still leads for our racing, defends the inside line into the club chicane. 3 different lines taken as they all try and find a little bit of real estate on the way into the left-right chicane. But Charlie Hart just can't find a way through. Seeing it's not that easy to pass now, because there is one racing line that is definitively quicker than the others, and to overtake, of course, you have to kind of go off that line, which is what he's doing. He's got an overlap, gets a bit of the side draft down the international pit straight. He's got the inside line for Abbey corner. This will be a brave move. He can't really back out of it because his teammate is pushing him along into the corner, but Sater just finds the grip and holds on to the advantage. Henry Jocelyn 1.5 seconds back, so he's gained about 3/10 on these 3 already on this lap, and I think it's going to come down even further by the end of the 3rd sector. They're in that 3rd sector now through Village and the Loop. And off wide over the exit curve goes Sater. Hart goes to the outside. Phelps tries to get to the inside of his teammate for second place. I don't think that's quite going to work on the exit of the corner. Charlie Hart should have the momentum. Well, not really. Phelps still sort of hanging around on the inside line, but Charlie Hart does go through Aintree corner back in front. But this is about to become a 4-way fight for the lead, I think. Let's see what this gap is now. It was 1.8 at the start of the lap back to Jocelyn, then it was 1.5 seconds. And I think it's going to come down even further. Yes, 0.6 came down by 9/10 of a second in the 3rd sector alone. So Jocelyn very much with this leading group now as they round Brooklands and head for Luffield corner. Lots of people sat in the BRDC grandstand, and they're being given a real show now as the Ginetta Juniors do what they do best. They've got 2 more laps to go. And Marcus Sater could be on course for not only a first career podium in Ginetta Juniors, but maybe a first career victory as well. Not if Charlie Hart has anything to do with it, though. Charlie has actually pulled a bit of a margin now over his teammate Isaac Phelps. That might benefit him. Means he's not under quite as much pressure. Might be free to go on the attack a bit more, but this was Charlie's issue back at Oulton Park. He spent so much time in second place there, challenging for the lead, but terrified to make a move in case it left the door open for the cars behind to go through. So he sort of played a bit of a cagey game and just sort of sat in second place, really, for most of those races. This one he has led, but now can he find a way back into the race lead? That's going to be the challenge. Through Maggots and Beckett's they go. Jocelyn very much a part of this battle now. It's a 1.8 second gap, then back to Chase Fernandez in 5th. As Marcus Sater takes a very agricultural line out onto the back straight, kicks up the dirt into the face of Charlie Hart. That will not help his visibility any. But thankfully, with the amount of water out on track, the car should be clean again by the time it gets down towards Stowe corner, where the leading quartet are running nose to tail. Actually, Isaac Phelps now proves me wrong, goes to the inside of Charlie Hart and, well, makes it look very easy, actually. Just sails past his teammate. Has he sailed on too far? I don't think so. He should have some grip on corner exit. Charlie Hart's coming back at him, but can't quite do it, and actually will do well now, I think, to tuck back in line behind his teammate. Those two worked together pretty well in yesterday's race. They'll need to do the same again now to chase down Sater, as Jocelyn goes around the outside of Charlie Hart and knocks him off the podium. So just like that, Charlie Hart goes from second down to fourth, tries to get back up the inside now through the second part of club, up into fourth gear, try and control the wheel spin on corner exit. He's gone back through, that was nicely done, but could have done without that little delay, really. Fernandez not really making any inroads into this group. He was 1.8 seconds behind at the start of the lap, still 1.8 seconds behind at Abbey, where Jocelyn goes back through on the inside of Charlie Hart now for third. And Charlie's hand comes off the wheel there in exasperation. What do I have to do, he thinks, to win one of these things? Actually, at the moment, staring down the barrel of his first non-podium finish of the year as Sater takes a very wide line through Village and then a very defensive line into the loop. So Phelps goes round the outside. That doesn't really work. Tries the switchback. That's no more effective. And so Marcus Sater hangs on. But these two very much getting away now from the jockeying Hart and Jocelyn behind. And Jocelyn, of course, up into that third position. Now way over the curve goes Charlie Hart. Won't have helped his run down the Wellington Straight, but his teammate Isaac Phelps has had a good run. He's got the slipstream. He's got Marcus Sater on the ropes a little bit now, defending the inside line. But we've seen Sater make that inside line work pretty well at Brooklands. Phelps, though, goes for the switchback. That was almost textbook. He's got the inside line. They clatter into each other, and around goes Phelps. No, Phelps has spun. To the left goes Charlie Hart. To the right goes Henry Jocelyn. And Isaac Phelps' shot at a race victory, I'm afraid, has just come crashing down around him. That was sort of predictable, really. He'd made such a late jink back to the inside. There's no grip on the apex in these conditions at Brooklands, and around he went. Also off at Luffield has gone Slater. So Slater, who had been having a good race actually, Alfie, off the road now. Charlie Hart and Henry Jocelyn have been banging wing mirrors. You can see both of them have one folded in, but Jocelyn sails round the outside at Copse Corner to reclaim second place. Charlie Hart had actually been ahead of him by 0.03 of a second at the line, and Charlie is gesticulating at Henry Jocelyn, saying, let's not fight, let's work together, because look, Marcus Sater is now 1.6 seconds ahead of them, and we're on the final lap of the race. So Charlie Hart doesn't really want to be battling Jocelyn now. He wants to work with the second place man to try and close in on the leader, but it might be too little too late. Of course, that's assuming Henry Jocelyn can even see that hand gesture. I very much doubt that he's aware that that's what Charlie Hart was saying. And he didn't get a great run onto the back straight there either. The first sector ends at the end of the hanger straight, so let's see if they are taking any time out of Sater. Sater was 1.6 seconds ahead at the start of the lap. Marcus breaks the beam with a 53.3 and a 53.2 for Jocelyn, so a tenth quicker, but they need more than that with less than a lap to go. Here comes Clark, meanwhile, at the inside of Chase Fernandez. Fernandez was the one making the late moves yesterday to jump into a podium place, but now in danger of losing a spot. Whilst Charlie Hart, I think, has realised that working with Henry Jocelyn is getting him nowhere, so he might as well go on the attack and try and find a way through. Is that run of second place finishes for Charlie Hart going to be broken? He was hoping it would be in this race, but was rather hoping it would be broken with a race win rather than a third place finish. But he's back up the inside now through Club Corner, just about enough space left by Henry Jocelyn, but Charlie Hart not able to find a way through. In the background, his teammate Ethan Jeff Hall, with one of the comeback drives of the season already, is back into the top 5 look, but they're 3 wide into Abbey nearly. Chase Fernandez almost got turned around the nose of the 25 car there, but manages to hang on, runs wide over the curb though, and Ethan Jeff Hall, I'm sure, will consider a move into the next braking zone at the Village hairpin. But he's got Clark up alongside him now as well. Archie Clark started 8th on the grid. He wants to get up an extra position, back into the top 5. He's up alongside Ethan Jeff Hall. That's the outside line now into the loop. So around the left-hander they go. Marcus Sater looks good for the victory now, doesn't he? But Henry Jocelyn versus Charlie Hart is yet to be settled. So too this 3-way fight for 4th position. Can Charlie do anything with Henry Jocelyn through this final sequence of corners, though? It's where we've seen a lot of overtaking and certainly a lot of side-by-side racing so far today. But in the wet, difficult to make this inside line work. Charlie jinks to the inside, but Jocelyn wasn't being fooled. He didn't move over to defend. So they both go in on the wide line. One more corner to go, and it could all come down to the exit from Luffield and a bit of a drag race to the line. We'll see what happens between these two. Jocelyn slides out wide, though. That opens the door for Charlie Hart, but has he got the traction on corner exit to get the job done? I think he might, actually. Charlie Hart back alongside. That will be a drag race to the line. It could be a photo finish, but Marcus Sater is going to claim his first victory in the Ginetta Junior Championship in round number 5 in 2024. A dead heat for second, but would you believe it? Second place Charlie has done it again by 20 27 thousandths of a second. He gets back ahead of Henry Josselin and gets his 5th consecutive second-place finish of the season. That is remarkable. It was destiny, that, for Charlie Hart, and Henry Josselin will be kicking himself for that little mistake that he made going through Luffield corner that opened the door for Charlie on the run out of the final turn. That was a fantastic battle between the two of them, and Charlie, for once, I think, will be relieved to have finished second there, because for a moment it looked like he'd be off the podium altogether. Marcus Sater, though, the race victor, and survived a few sketchy moments in that race, but drove superbly and managed to pull away from the rest of the field. The rookie class goes to Sater as well. Charlie Hart wins the junior class, which is basically anyone who's not a rookie, because he's in his 2nd season of racing in this category now, Charlie. And well, it's not really anything to be sniffed at. He's outscored all of his big championship rivals, so he will extend his points lead. This was the margin for 2nd place. That is what 27 thousandths of a second looks like. That was very, very close indeed. Isaac Phelps, by the way, after that spin at Brooklands, fired up perhaps on the final lap, managed to set the fastest lap of the race on his way to 7th place. So he will get a bonus point for the fastest lap. He gained a couple of positions, I think, on that last lap as well. And so Isaac Phelps salvaged something from that race. But because he finished down in 7th place, Charlie Hart will now have extended his margin in the championship by quite some way. So all in all, a good morning's work, really, for Charlie. But obviously would have been hoping for a race victory. That, in the end, wasn't meant to be. And it's another 2nd place finish. Ethan Jeff Hall has come up to celebrate, I think, with his R-Racing teammate Marcus Sater, who wins the 5th round of the Ginetta Junior Championship by 1.8 seconds in the end over Charlie Hart, back in 2nd place again, and Henry Josselin in 3rd. Chase Fernandez 4th, Ethan Jeff Hall 5th, and Archie Clark in 6th position. Then it was Isaac Phelps after that late spin, Ruben Dan, James Shotton, and Nickolas Ellis to complete the top 10. Colin Cronin was 11th, ahead of Alfie Slater and Torrin Byrne, whilst Harry Moss and Tom Ingram Hill were both in the top 15. Max Cuthbert, Alfie Davis, Ethan Carney, Jack Robinson, and Tiso Mabunda completed the top 20. James Ellis was 21st, ahead of Holly Mile, Giovanni Cassell-Joseph 23rd, and Mallory Mabunda in 24th, whilst Felix Livesey and Jude Peters were both non-finishers. Peters, of course, pulling off behind the safety car, and Felix Livesey retiring to the pit lane about halfway through the race. So another dramatic race. You would expect nothing less, really, from the Ginetta Juniors. This was perhaps the pivotal moment, though. Isaac Phelps battling Marcus Sater for the race lead. You can see the car on the inside line losing traction, crunch into the side of Sater, right in front of the super slow-mo camera as well. And around went the Elite Motorsport driver. The real miracle, actually, is that he doesn't then get collected by either Henry Josselin or Charlie Hart, who go either side of him, look, just there. Brilliant reactions from both of them. And also that Marcus Sater didn't get tipped into a spin either, because that would have been disastrous for Marcus, who had driven a flawless race up until that point. Oh, and then this is how Slater ends up in the gravel. That's interesting. So as Phelps rejoined, he immediately tried to squeeze out Slater. And poor old Alfie ends up with 2 wheels on the grass. And in these conditions, there's only one result from that, and that's a spin into the gravel trap. Brilliant pictures from the super slow-mo up at Luffield corner. That is fantastic, isn't it? Not for Slater, obviously. He won't enjoy watching that back, but very artsy stuff from our camera operator up at Luffield corner. It's a good place to put that super slow-mo, isn't it? It's one of the slowest sequences of corners on the track, actually. You wouldn't think we'd need it there, but it's always an action hotspot in the wet or the dry. That has certainly been the case so far today. Well, Marcus Sater with a race victory. Charlie Hart 2nd place. Both of them, by the way, set their personal best lap on the final lap. And of course, we had the outright fastest lap of the race for Isaac Phelps. I don't know if it stopped raining outside. I think it might have done. That's promising, perhaps, for what's to come later on in the afternoon. But that would explain why a number of drivers went faster at the end of the race than they had been earlier on. So conditions improving slightly. There's definitely less standing water now than there was, that much I would say. But whether it's going to continue to improve as the afternoon goes on, we'll have to wait and see. For the main event, if you like, the British GT Silverstone 500 comes a bit later on today. Well, let's take a look back then, shall we, at the highlights of the 5th round of the Ginetta Junior Championship that started behind the safety car in very wet conditions here at Silverstone, with Charlie Hart on pole position, desperate to end that 2nd-placed curse that seems to have been placed on him so far this year. As yesterday, his teammate Isaac Phelps was in close company, moving up ahead of Marcus Sater in into second position in the early stages, whilst a 3-wide battle behind ended in tears for the other R-Racing car in the lead group, Ethan Jeff Hall, who had a spectacular spin but would eventually recover to score some handy points. Charlie Hart was busy defending his race lead. These three really pulled away quite significantly through the middle part of the race. They were eventually caught by Henry Jocelyn once he'd freed himself from a brilliant battle going on towards the back end of the top 10. It was nice as well to see Alfie Slater up in the mix, at least until his moment later on in the race. But at the head of the field, it was the two Elite Motorsport drivers trying to gang up on the R-Racing number 67 machine. Marcus Sater got into the lead mid-race and then refused to give the advantage back away. Charlie Hart on a few occasions got his nose back in front, but almost immediately Sater got the better run off Luffield Corner and moved back into the lead of the race. Charlie Hart's frustration would grow in the latter part of the race as well, because as well as his teammate Isaac Phelps, they were then joined by Henry Jocelyn to make it a four-way scrap for the victory. Isaac Phelps dived to the inside at Stowe Corner, relieved his teammate of second position, and it wouldn't be much longer before Henry Jocelyn managed to move through as well. The key moment of the race, though, came when Phelps attacked for the lead down at Brooklands. There was contact made with Marcus Sater. The leader held on, but unfortunately Phelps sent into a spin. Sater therefore able to go on and take a fairly comfortable maiden victory in the championship, but Charlie Hart this time cut it very fine to get onto the second step of the podium, getting up the inside of Henry Jocelyn on the run to the flag and claiming second place by 27 thousandths of a second.